Welcome to the War Party Podcast with your host, me, Chris Warren. So happy to be here, guys, for episode 3. We got a lot of news to cover today, so let's get started first with the Epstein files. Huge, big new drop. Probably a lot of you guys have read about this already, seen a bunch of this, but we're going to break down some of the stuff. Now, a lot of you have asked, Chris, why haven't you talked about the Epstein files in the past? I've gotten tons of DMs about that. People think I'm like controlled opposition or I'm working for the CIA and that's why I won't touch it. No, it's because back in like 2015, 2016, where the whole initial Epstein drop happened, and there were some people that knew even before that, but when it first started to get known, I saw that and tried to talk about it to everyone I knew. I was in college at the time, and everyone I knew, I was like, hey, did you hear about this Epstein thing? He's got like an island, and there's a flight log, and all these celebrities and politicians are involved with it. And everyone called me crazy. Everyone said I was insane. Everyone said I was like a cracked out conspiracy theorist, and they didn't want to hear it. And fast forward to a couple years ago when Epstein became the biggest thing on earth, and everyone was talking about Epstein didn't kill himself, and y'all thought you were warriors against the PSYOP. You all thought, wow, I'm a hardcore conspiracy theorist because now CNN is talking about this, so I can allow myself to believe in it. And I'm a little bitter about it. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bitter about it because the same people I told about this that then said I was crazy came to me years later and were like, did you hear about this Epstein guy? Apparently maybe a lot of celebrities are on that list. Yeah, the thing I told you about and you laughed at me in our college dorm and told me I was crazy and that I need to stop smoking weed, which to be fair, I probably should have. I ended up having a problem with that. But I was right, and no one gave me the I told you so thing. No one allowed me to have the I told you so, I was right about this. So I'm a little burnt out on it. It's been a decade. I've been talking about this for over a decade, and now all of a sudden it's cool and mainstream, and I'm a little pissed. I'm a little pissed about it. I'm a little pissed. The same way when the Riyadh Comedy Festival was happening and everyone was like, they're going to go over there and do comedy for the Saudis. The Saudis are evil. Same thing. I was talking about that in fucking high school. And y'all said I was crazy. And now all of a sudden, fast forward like 15 years later, and oh my, can you believe the Saudis? Yeah, I've been talking about it. So I'm sorry about that. I'm a little bitter about it. I'm a little bitter about it that me and some people I know have been screaming about different conspiracy stuff like this for years, and everyone said we were crazy, and it was like, oh, you're like an InfoWars guy. You don't know what you're talking about. And it's very annoying to now see all those same people come forward like this is brand new information and they're cracking the case and they're ahead of the curve. They don't fall for the propaganda of mainstream news because they understand this now. It's like, motherfucker, you didn't believe in this shit until mainstream news told you it was real. I told you it was real. I sent you articles, I sent you threads, and you didn't listen to me. So I'll stop there. I'm going to get emotional. I'm a little bitter about that. But yeah, there's a new Epstein drop. And while we knew for a while that Ghislaine Maxwell, in the last drop, it was revealed that she was a big-time Reddit mod, which I think is so funny, that she was a big-time Reddit mod behind, like, a lot of the big political subreddits and, like, used her mod powers to silence certain voices and to raise other voices and to introduce a lot of misinformation on Reddit and kind of control the narrative, which, hey, respect. That's genius. But now it's been revealed that allegedly, potentially, Epstein might have been a huge 4chan guy, and he might have invented the politics board on 4chan. He might have been the founder of that. And supposedly, Ghislaine and Epstein met with Moot, the creator of 4chan, and had like regular interaction with him, which is so funny that all the things that you guys thought were like, oh, this is where the real information is. I'm getting away from the mainstream media. I don't fall for propaganda. I get my news from Reddit or 4chan. It turns out that's been a controlled psyop for like over a decade. That's hilarious. That is so funny. And I think there is something really kind of cool, just let's be honest, cool, that like Ghislaine and Epstein were just like hanging out by the pool, having a couple's day, and just in between emails from powerful politicians and celebrities, they were like, what should I post on 4chan today? Let's get them hyped up about this and just post some like crazy psyops, red herring conspiracy thing on 4chan to muddy the waters. And then Ghislaine is like, cool, I'll do the other one on Reddit. And it is interesting that, like, Reddit's the place where the radical far left started to develop, and 4chan is kind of the place where the mainstream radical far right started to develop. I'm talking about the mainstream versions, like the hardcore real far left, far right are genuinely off the grid and both get kind of scary. But like the guy that thinks he's far right or thinks he's far left, they got radicalized on Reddit and 4chan. So Ghislaine and Epstein basically invented both extremes and then controlled them. And this is just an example of how all of life works. It used to be the CIA and the FBI doing this. Now it's Ghislaine and Epstein, which were definitely funded by the CIA. I mean, that's pretty clear at this point. And by another organization from overseas that I'm a little too scared to mention by name, but I think it's from the Mediterranean region over there. A lot of conflict. I think you know who I'm talking about. So yeah, they were totally playing everybody, and that's so funny. It's like when you find out that the account that started like a troll war, both accounts were ran by the same guy. That's what this is. That's what this is at the highest level, and it's so great. And I love this. Actually, funnily enough about that, if you're a Warhammer fan, you might appreciate this. There's a similar story going around. A guy from the subreddit for Alpha Legion went and made an Iron Warriors account and an Imperial Fist account and got into an argument between his own two accounts that then got the Iron Warriors subreddit and the Imperial Fist subreddit to get into like an online screaming match. And that's very funny. And it's if you don't care about Warhammer 40K, that analogy won't make sense to you. But I thought that was funny that basically the exact same thing was happening with Ghislaine and Epstein. And that's credit to them. That's a power couple. That's a power couple. That's just impressive. Super evil, horrible, inexcusable, radically evil human beings. But that is very funny that they basically psyoped 4chan and Reddit and a large portion of America's youth, like younger millennials and Gen Z, into crazy political ideology when they were both working for the same team. So that's, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Another funny thing about the Epstein files that kind of relates to the 4chan thing that I think was really funny is supposedly, and I don't know how true this is, I didn't have time to super look into this one, but it's just so funny, that supposedly emails prove that Epstein was sending out and distributing Five Nights at Freddy's not safe for work content, that he was like a mass distributor of Rule 34 for Five Nights at Freddy's. And that might have been one of the worst things he's done. That's hilarious. That's just like he couldn't help himself. Like what? I just am curious because everything these two do is like really calculated for like an evil overarching like plot they have to control society. And I would just love to be in the room as a fly on the wall, to hear that conversation with their like evil cabal about how Five Nights at Freddy's Rule 34 content is going to shift society or politics in a way that gives them advantage. I don't know what the logic was there, but I thought that was really funny. That's coming with all the things he's been accused of and definitely did. That one seems worthy enough to mention. Like it was a headline in the news. He was, hey, multi-talented, doing multiple things. Also, another funny one is that Epstein got kicked off of Xbox Live, like in the 360 days, which is like, what do you have to say in the 360 days to get kicked off of like Modern Warfare 2? People were saying some pretty horrible things to me when I was in middle school and like a freshman in high school on those, and no one ever got banned. I said some horrible things. I think every young man that grew up in that era where you played Modern Warfare, World at War, Modern Warfare 2, in those lobbies, we were saying some wild shit that we probably, regret now in older age. So it's funny to me that, like, what was so bad that Epstein said that got him kicked off of there? And the running theory, which I probably agree with, is, as you all know, allegedly, I have to say that, I don't want to get sued, allegedly, Bill Gates, who was very close, allegedly, with Epstein, and allegedly went to the island a bunch and did all that sort of things that happened there, which we won't talk in detail. You know what happened there. He had, like, fucking Epstein ghosted him. Like, Bill Gates allegedly got like a virulent version of an STD, like a super STD that the average person would never encounter. Like, you have to be in like the dark reaches of the world to get it. I don't even know what it's called or what it does, but he got it allegedly from like a Russian escort that Epstein hooked him up with. And he was like, I don't know what to do. Like, my wife's going to find out I've been cheating on her because I'm taking all these antibiotics and is not getting rid of this, like, crazy super STD that this Russian escort gave me. Epstein, please help. And Epstein ignored him. Epstein ignored his, like, calls and emails. And, like, you can see in the threads, like, he left Bill Gates on red, dude. He left him on red. And so it's theorized that Bill Gates was so upset about this that he used the only power he had over Epstein, which was to kick him off of Xbox Live, which is very petty and very fun. A very funny way to react to that. And it's also funny to think, because I played like days worth of Modern Warfare 1 and 2 and World at War, like days worth, like 20 days plus on each of those, in middle school and high school. And it's funny to think of how much one-on-one contact I might have had with Epstein, which that sounds bad. I don't mean it like in that way, but like I was on 4chan all the time. It's very possible I reacted to something that Epstein wrote, and that's kind of weird. That's too much of a 1 degree of separation from such an evil figure. And same thing on Xbox Live. I was on Xbox Live all the time, playing, and I would scream at people. I would lose my mind. I was the kind of guy that would, I was a shithead. Like, I would use the noob tube, and I knew on every map, I knew the exact spot you had to aim in the sky at the beginning of the match, at like what second to shoot it up in the air and kill like 3 people running out of spawn. So I might have trolled Jeffrey Epstein in a Modern Warfare 2 lobby, and that is very funny to me. I'll never know for sure, but it's possible. You never know. And you might have too. If you played a lot of Xbox and were on 4chan, you might have interacted with the big El Jefe himself, which is kind of terrifying because I was a child at the time, and he doesn't do great things to children. So thank God I was behind the internet and not in person. So that's very funny to me. Also in these files, Elon showed up. Elon shows up in everything. And Elon... This is so funny. So Elon went to a couple of Jeffrey's parties, and there's a series of emails of him emailing Jeffrey like, hey, when's the next time you're having a party? I had a hard work day. I've cleared my schedule for like the next month. You just let me know when one of your famous parties is going on. Would love to come down, unwind. And I'm not looking for a relaxing party. I'm looking for it to get hardcore. Like, when are we partying, Jeffrey? And this is all alleged, by the way. And then Epstein basically left him on red. And it's so sad because Elon doesn't take the hint. He sends like 5 or 6 emails to Jeffrey. He like double texts him. Like when a girl clearly doesn't want a second date and you keep sending her like, hey, I had a lot of fun last night. You think we'd go out another time? Hey, you've probably been busy and haven't had time to check your phone. Yeah, but like next week, is Friday work for you? Hey, I'm watching this show you talked about. Reminds me of you. We should really hang out again. Like that loser shit you do when you're a young man and like you don't understand how dating works, like in your early 20s and teens, and you like double text a girl like desperately. At least I'll own it. I did that shit. I embarrassed the shit out of myself with some women as a young man, not taking the hint that they didn't want to go on a date. And hey, you live, you learn, you send some embarrassing texts before you realize like, oh, she's probably not going to respond, and you move on with your life. But Elon allegedly, as a full-grown man, like triple, quadruple, 7 times, I don't even know what the term for that is, 7 times emailed rather, Jeffrey, trying to get invited to one of his super cool parties again. But I guess he was such a bad vibe at the 2 or 3 he had already gone to that Jeff was like, nah, this guy would ruin a sex cult party. He'd give off bad vibes. He'd scare all the children at our island where we sacrifice things to Moloch, so he can't come to the super cool sex cult party. Which is like, how much of a weirdo do you have to be to not get invited to that? Like, I feel like that's the weirdest shit on earth. Like, that's the place for psycho weirdos to go. And you're so much of a psycho weirdo loser that they don't even want you there because you'd ruin the vibe. You'd ruin the party. You'd make everyone uncomfortable, Elon. And that's so funny. And then he forwarded it to like Ghislaine after like the 7th email, basically as his like secretary almost. And he was like, Ghislaine, just like take care of this, dude. I don't want to deal with this. Take care of this. And Ghislaine sends him an email about like, basically, yeah, we're not really doing the island anymore. Like, you know, we're going to keep it low key for a while, but we'll definitely let you know the next time that it happens. And like, that's just so funny. That's like some high school shit about like, you know, they don't want to invite you to the party. So they're like, yeah, you know, my parents found out, so we're actually not having the party. We're not having the party, so don't even come by. Don't worry about it. Or like, you know, like in college trying to get into a frat party and they're like, oh, sorry, it's brothers only at the frat party. And then they dap someone up and let them in. And you're like, that guy's not a brother. And it's like, oh yeah, but he's like my cousin, so he's allowed it. I'm sorry, I would let you in, but it's really only brothers and family. You know, that's the treatment Elon got. He got fucking mogged at the entrance due to a frat party like freshman year of college. And that's so funny to me. That's so funny to me that you could be that much of a weirdo. They're not going to invite you to their weird, you know, evil satanic cult anymore. You're too much of a bad vibe for that. You can't come to the island. And Elon doesn't give up, though. He doesn't get the hint because then he finds out they had another party after they told him they weren't doing parties anymore. Parties, we all know what was going on there. I'm not getting into details on that because it's icky, but like we know, right? And so he goes, hey, I must have missed the last email thread. You must have forgot to invite me. I must have got lost in the mail. But I heard from so-and-so you were having the parties again. Would love to come back now that the parties are up and running. And it's like, Elon, the parties never stopped. The island never stopped. They stopped inviting you. Take the hint. Save what little pride you have. Have some self-respect, all right? And so that was hilarious to me. And it's, okay, it's not really funny because the things that were going on there, as we all know, I don't want to talk about them because I'm worried the algorithm, you know, might get mad at me. But, like, we all know what was going on there, and it was awful. It was some of the worst shit on earth. And so it's not funny, but it is kind of funny that, like, you can be such a bad hang they don't even want you there at the eating babies alive party. You can't come because you're too much of a bad vibe. Like, that's really, Elon, you got to look at yourself and reflect. Same with Bill Gates. He basically ghosted Bill Gates and Elon, allegedly. And what a bunch of losers, dude. That's so funny. That's so funny to me. Also, another thing about the whole Epstein situation is Pizzagate's real. Pizzagate basically got confirmed in these most recent leaks. And I'm going to be real. When Pizzagate happened, my mentality with it was, okay, there is something awful going on with Jeffrey and the island and the flight logs and all this stuff. And that Pizzagate itself is like a CIA, FBI, whatever intelligence agency psyop to muddy the waters. Like, I really thought they had some guy in the CIA go, how do we cover this up? And he goes, perfect. We'll pour a bunch of crazy shit on top of it that makes it so unbelievable that people won't believe the real story, right? And intelligence agencies, governments, they do shit like this all the time, where like a story will be 70% true, and they want to bury it, so they'll throw like 30, 40% on top of the 70% true story to make it seem so crazy that you then dismiss the real stuff because it's attached to all the crazy, unbelievable stuff. And that's what I thought was going on with Pizzagate. I thought the Epstein story was real, and to try to muddy the waters, they added all this shit about Pizzagate. And, no, it turns out it was real. They were really referring to orders of pizza and cheeseburgers and hot dogs. But they were children. They were actually doing that, and that's crazy. That's crazy, and I'll take the L on that. I overestimated the intelligence agency and underestimated how psycho some of these crazy elites can be, because I thought that was so ridiculous to use that as code and like to have that be the system. And I was like, no, that's got to be a CIA psyops to muddy the waters. There's no way they would do something so ridiculous. And turns out, no, they would. They would. So I was wrong on that one. That is, that's kind of insane that that's what they were doing. And hey, to all the Pizzagate truthers out there who I doubted, who I said, hey, cut it out. You're muddying the waters. Let's focus on the real story. Turns out you were right. I am a big enough man to own when I was wrong, and I owe you an apology. So to all the Pizzagate truthers, I am sorry. You were right on that one. I underestimated how evil and retarded the world can truly be. And that was wrong of me. I should never have underestimated that. And you guys were right. And so you get an I told you so. You get that one. To all my friends who tried to talk me into believing that one, I should have listened. So I'll own that. Also, another thing about these whole leaks, and this one isn't even really a surprise. Big allegedly. And remember, this is a comedy podcast. All right, this is all a bit and allegedly. This new leak allegedly confirms that Trump was involved. And we all knew. There was so much evidence, pictures of him with him, different emails, videos, the flight log. Like, it was so obvious he was involved with Mr. El Jefe. But this one kind of is like dead to rights. You can't even really deny it anymore. There's no plausible deniability. It's like, it's clear. Allegedly, it's clear that he was involved in this whole thing. And again, we all knew that. That's not new news. It's just more damning evidence to the point where, like, you can't even try to make an argument against it anymore. You just look ridiculous. It's all there. And this makes me feel comfortable to talk about this next thing because I kind of have beef with Trump. And before anyone gets excited, it's not for the reasons you might think, right? And sure, there's lots of reasons to be upset about him, some legitimate, some, maybe not, I don't know. You all have your own opinions on that, but the real reason I'm upset with him is because he ruined the Republican Party. And whether you like the Republican Party or not, historically, it was a much better party than it is today. And I think we can all, even Republicans, can acknowledge that, okay? My old school conservative heads, you know what I'm talking about because you saw the shift. So basically what happened is Trump got into office in 2016 and was basically on a ticket to, for a lot of people, right, that voted for him, I think it was really like a middle finger to the establishment. It was really this thought that it was going to be so embarrassing for the system to have this TV star elected, and he was going to shake things up and kind of fuck up their money and fuck up their plans, and that was going to be like a hard reset on the American political system and teach both parties, like, hey, you got to kind of listen to the American people more. You got to listen to us, and if you don't, we'll elect candidates like this, and they will fuck your shit up. And then, of course, he immediately got co-opted, by the system, because that's what happens. And then when he did January 6th, a lot of old school Republicans who had basically been running his cabinet, like Trump was pretty satisfied to just be a figurehead that first term. And the reason the first Trump term, we had all these like people freaking out about how it's going to be horrible, it's going to be awful. And then it realistically ended up to be kind of like a lame duck average Republican presidency. And that's because all the old school neocons ran his cabinet. They ran everything for him, and he kind of deferred to them to make decisions, and that's why it ran smoothly, because he did get co-opted by kind of the old school system. And then when those same guys did not stand with him on January 6th, he basically did a soft coup on the Republican Party. He got rid of all those guys. People don't give enough credit to Mike Pence. If you remember him, everyone shit on Mike Pence, and there's legitimate reasons to. I'm not defending the guy as a politician, but as a human being, when January 6th happened, he stood up to Trump and he's like, nah, dude, we're not doing this. Like, this is, what are you talking about? No, we're not storming the Capitol. This is not how democracy works. I'm not standing for this. And Mike Pence and a bunch of other Republican congressmen, senators, and inside men in the White House all stood up to Trump and basically said, we're not doing this. We're not supporting this. And they all had their political careers ruined. You have not seen or heard from Mike Pence since that happened. And whatever you think about the man, right, because he's not my favorite, whatever you think about him, respect that he destroyed his life. And he knew that's what he was doing. He destroyed his life to stand up to Trump and like hold down democracy. And I think that's pretty commendable. I think kudos to him. He deserves a lot more of our respect than he is given, because you have not seen or heard from that man since that happened. And that's why. And those were the consequences of him standing up to that. And then Trump, because he was so upset about how these guys didn't stand for him, When we then got to the next election cycle and the Republicans really realized we don't have a deep bench, we have no one to run, we're going to have to run Trump again. And Trump basically made the backroom deal of like, cool, I want all these guys that stood up to me, that like challenged me in my last term, especially with January 6th. I want them all out. I want them all out. And the Republicans kind of felt they had no other choice if they wanted to win. And I mean, I guess they were right because Trump did win that election, right? So I guess for them, it was a good horse to bet on. And they cleaned house. They got rid of all the old school neocon Republicans. And say what you want about the neocons. They are efficient. They know what they're doing. Sure, they're a little evil, but like they're the reason the American empire runs. They're very competent. They've been in Washington for like some of them 40, 50 years. They know the system. They have the connects internationally. Like they're the quiet guys behind the curtain running everything. And he got rid of all of them. And that's why the second term has looked the way it has, because he surrounded himself with all these technocrat billionaires and all these yes men and the few people that were willing to work with him and basically do what he said. And he destroyed the Republican Party. And before everyone thinks I'm just out here shitting on Republicans, the Democrats, the same thing happened to you guys with the woke movement. And I hate using that term because that feels like kind of played out or like kind of lame to say, but I don't know what else to call it. Yeah, with the far left kind of like woke movement, you guys kind of cleaned house of all your old neocons. You pushed them to the side, and you let a bunch of these populist candidates in. Which again, say what you want about Trump, he was a populist candidate. That's why he got in. And the Democrats did the exact same thing. It wasn't quite extreme. They still have a couple neocons in there. They did get Biden in there, he's like an old school neocon guy. They tried to run Kamala, who was an old school neocon party woman. Kind of ran the party line. And so the Democrats still have a couple neocons in there, but they kind of pushed out a lot of them to appease this younger, more socially conscious, whatever you want to call it, crowd. And so that's what's happened is the uniparty of the neocons. And again, there's a lot of problem with the neocons. I understand that, right? But they ran the American empire since the Eisenhower administration. They've been out here running the planet to make sure America is always on top and all of the economic goods and wealth and natural resources flow towards America. They're the reason that the U.S. petrodollar is still the reserve currency of the world. The fact that after the Nixon administration, where we went off the gold standard, they kept the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency by attaching it to oil, fucking genius. And it still is today. Like something crazy, like 70-80% of all international transactions are done in the U.S. dollar. That is, we don't make anything in America. Our product is the U.S. dollar because people want it so badly that they will do unfair deals with us to get it. And that's how we're able to leverage power to get all these cheap goods from other countries and to force them to sign deals that clearly benefit us, is because we control the waterways and we control the world reserve currency of the U.S. dollar. And so now with both parties kind of becoming more populist, and yeah, there's still a bunch of shit they do that nobody likes, right? And we could list them, we'll be here all day. But like, they're not doing the good shit anymore, right? We put up with all that other bullshit because they made sure the US dollar was on top, and now they're not doing that. And that pisses me off. So that's kind of my gripe with Donnie there, is that he kind of threw away the American empire and he got rid of all my homeboys, all the old school neocons. And it's a huge bummer. What are you going to do? I normally don't comment on domestic politics, but I do think this relates to international geopolitics with America's position and why it's been a little different in the last 10 or so years than it has been in the past. And it's been noticeable. And that's why, is because you don't have the competent old evil neocons at the wheel, which again, say what you want about them, they knew how to run shit. And speaking of old school evil neocons, no one on the Bush administration was on the Epstein list. Dick Cheney wasn't on the Epstein list. And I'm kind of pissed because I'm seeing all these memes now in the last week about how Dick Cheney wasn't on the Epstein list. A bunch of you guys sent those to me. Guys, I made a video on that 2 months ago. I made the joke. I made that joke. I've done it on stage before. And now all of a sudden, some people are putting out low-effort compilations of Dick Cheney with just the text, and now they're getting more views than my video did, and now I can't do that joke anymore because it's ruined. Now everyone will think I'm copying the internet, but I didn't copy the internet. The internet copied me. To be fair, I don't think the people that are making that saw my video. I think it's just a parallel thinking thing. But it is upsetting when you have a good idea And then like a couple weeks or months later, someone else has the same idea, but they get more attention for it. And so now you go like, I'm not going to fight the battle. I just got to retire the joke and, accept that my video didn't get as many views. So I lose that battle. But what are you going to do? But yeah, no, again, the neocons, none of them were on the Epstein list. Just saying. They were evil, but they were doing their own thing. Most of them were kind of asexual. They got off on power. Dick Cheney, Nixon, Kissinger, Rumsfeld, Bush, like none of those guys ever got caught in a weird sex scandal. None of them ever cheated on their wives or were like had any suspicion, accusations of anything like being a perv. Their whole thing was power. That was their sexuality, was how much power can I get and how many countries in the Middle East can I invade? And say what you want. I think that's more commendable. I think that's more commendable than being, going to Jeffrey Epstein's island. But I digress. We're left pretty much only with allegedly, we're left only with guys that went to the island as our politicians. That's kind of a sad state. This is a sad way for the American empire to go out. It really is. That just a fucking Reddit moderator, and a 4chan shit poster power couple toppled the entire neocon regime and ushered in a new era of like weird con artist, technocrat, billionaire politicians. And sure, the old politicians were con artists in their own way, but it was more old school. There were rules to it. There were lines you didn't cross. And now, we're past that. It makes me sad, but it's the reality we're living in, and we all see it. It just is what it is. And that's really why I don't comment on domestic policies that much anymore, politics rather. It's because it's all like, it's over. It's over. You're seeing it. It's over. Like, what do we like? It's fucked. I don't know. All my guys are gone. Kissinger's dead. Nixon's dead. Rumsfeld's dead. Dick Cheney's dead. Bush is out of politics. I mean, he wasn't really a powerhouse, but he was funny. I enjoyed him. They're never going to run Hillary again. Hillary was an old school neocon candidate, dude. She wanted boots on the ground in Libya. I actually low-key kind of liked Hillary. She was a bad bitch. That's a first female president I could have been okay with. And she worked on the Obama administration. Obama, another classic neocon, fucking bombed every Pakistani wedding in existence, overthrew Libya, started shit in Syria. Like, Obama knew how to run the American empire. And, those days are over. I accept we're in a new reality in which my political ideology of neocon global domination, the American empire running everything in the world is just not tenable anymore. And it's sad, but sometimes you got to accept that times are changing. It's like when you're getting older. You can't be the old guy in the bar hitting on 20-year-olds. That's sad. That's sad. No, you got to accept. You can't be balding 56 with a Hawaiian shirt on and like a gold necklace, like talking to the college co-eds at the local bar. That's just, what are you doing, man? Grow up. Get out of there. And that's, that's how the neocon empire dies softly into the night. In other news, the Edmonton independence movement is growing in popularity in Canada. And for those that don't know, Edmonton is like a province in Canada. And I just want to say, it was just last week that I talked about how we need a Quebec version of the IRA to break apart Canada. And what happens literally 5 days after I release that episode? They send U.S. politicians, diplomats, to go meet with the preeminent leaders of the Edmonton independence movement. It's like the CIA listens to this. Thank you, CIA. Big fan. And another one of my ideas stolen. But they went over there to meet them, and Canada, understandably, was like, what the, you can't talk to our breakaway independence movement, fuck them. And we were like, no, we're just meeting with them to hear them out, just to be polite. And we weren't. We were totally meeting with them to see how we can give them federal funding, like CIA money, so they can run campaigns, and they can, they can try to break away from Canada. And if nothing else, it'll give Canada a huge headache to deal with, and it costs us, a couple $100 million. That's nothing. That's nothing to a guy like me. To fund their campaigns and propaganda and all that shit. But honestly, I don't think we will, but if we could pull off getting Edmonton to break away from Canada, that could be great for the U.S. because Edmonton has their team's called the Oilers, by the way, and there's a reason for that because they have something crazy like 85-90% of all of Canada's proven oil reserves, which for those that don't know, because that's like a weird term some of you might not be familiar with, proven oil reserves is just how much oil we believe is in the ground. right? So they have like 80 to 90% of the the oil in the ground in all of Canada. So they basically have all of Canada's oil. They have like a higher GDP per capita than most of Canada, except for like the territories like Yukon. And the only reason those have big ones is because it's like 7 people that live up there. So the GDP only has to be split like a couple ways. But Edmonton, as far as like province where real people live, is kind of the wealthiest in GDP per capita. They produce all the oil in Canada for the most part. And if they did go independent as their own country, really their only options to trade would be Canada, which they'd have kind of tension with, although they would trade with them, and then America. And we could get way better oil deals than we could with Canada, and they would trade with us, and it'd be mutually beneficial. They make money on their oil. We'd get more oil. You know we love to control oil. It's the whole point of the American empire. And that would give us access to just even one more node of oil in the world. And we could influence them quite a bit through that and get an ally up there, and it would kind of just make our position on the global oil market that much stronger. And it never hurts to have your neighbors a little weaker. You know, you don't want them in open rebellion with a civil war because that'll give you like all sorts of problems. But if you could split up Canada into smaller parts that we could make more advantageous trade deals with and have more influence with, that would be positive for us. So hopefully that's what the CIA is trying to do there. That's what I'd do. And we'll see how that progresses as time goes on. In other news, the EU has designated the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, basically Iran's military, as terrorists for their killing of protesters over the last few weeks. And in response, Iran classified like the EU military as terrorists. And I think it's so funny. Like, nah, you're a terrorist. No, you're a terrorist. And it's just so silly. Because also, like, neither of those places are going to do anything to each other. Like, Iran and the EU aren't putting on the gloves and getting in the ring. Like, they're not going to be the ones fighting. So it's just funny to, like, they're like dogs barking behind a fence. If you open the gate, both of them would run away. But I just thought that was very, like, kind of cute and funny. Like, EU's trying to stand up and be tough, and then Iran's trying to stand up and be tough. And it's like, would you stop? Would you both stop? You're being ridiculous. In the meantime, America's moved a whole carrier fleet to the region to put pressure on Iran. And I thought it was kind of funny that, like, the government said, like, hey, if you kill one more protester, we might do military action. But we said that before and then we didn't. And now we're saying it again, and the protests are pretty much done. Like, there's pockets, but it's pretty much done. So it's kind of like, hey, if you do this thing that you have no need to do anymore because you've accomplished your goal, then we'll do something. It just kind of seems like a hollow threat, like it's kind of just virtue signaling almost in geopolitics for us to threaten that. Meanwhile, the Saudis, hilarious. The Saudis have said, actually, I think it would just embolden the regime if you didn't bomb them. I think it'd be kind of a pussy move, America, if you didn't bomb them. You should maybe bomb them. Because the Saudis hate Iran. For those that don't know, the Middle East world version of the Cold War, you know, their version of the U.S. versus the Soviet Union is the Sunni majority Saudi Arabia as like the preeminent Sunni power in the region versus the Shia majority Iran as the preeminent Shia power in the region of the Middle East. And these two fucking hate each other. They do like weird Cold War era like proxy wars and psyops on each other all the time. It's very funny. It's very interesting. And, so of course the Saudis want us to bomb Iran. Of course the Saudis want us to bomb Iran. That would be great for them. They could weaken their biggest rival. And then meanwhile, the Saudis are also having like huge tension over the last 2 weeks with the UAE, United Arab Emirates, if you will, because they're having their own proxy war. They're having their own proxy war in Yemen, where the Saudis back the pseudo-legitimate current government of Yemen, the official government of Yemen. They don't rule large swaths of the country and have no real power outside of like the Saudis sending air support to hold their position. But technically that is the official government of Yemen that the Saudis support, and the UAE supports rebel groups like the Houthis. You heard about the Houthis? They support groups like that as well as other groups in the area, because there's like 7 rebel, like any conflict in the Middle East, there's like 7 different rebel groups that are fighting the government, but they're also kind of fighting each other, and it's like a whole clusterfuck. It's a mess. And so like 2 weeks ago, the UAE sent a weapon shipment to one of those rebel groups in Yemen so that they could fight the government. And the Saudis blew it up. And then that kind of caused tension because it wasn't officially in the hands of the rebel group. So they kind of attacked the UAE indirectly, but like kind of directly. And then they had some heated tension and it was a whole thing that ended up fizzling out into nothing. Everyone's like, are they going to go to war? It's like, dude, the Saudis would roll the UAE in seconds and it wouldn't be beneficial to anyone. And we won't let it happen because that would disrupt our supply of oil. And we don't fuck around. Remember the petrodollar. We don't fuck around with that. So it kind of fizzled out into nothing. But I just do think it's interesting. There's all these different like tensions and proxy wars in different parts of the world that most people aren't aware of that are like just as meaningful to those countries as our proxy wars are. And actually, in some cases, like just as cool. But we just never talk about them because we assume everything, is about America. And if America's not involved, it's not happening. But no, there's crazy proxy wars going all over the place. So that's kind of what's going on in the Middle East. I personally think it will fizzle out into nothing, much like the Saudi UAE situation. I think we will have a standoff with Iran. We'll say some mean words. The most you're going to get is 1 or 2 bombings. I don't even think that'll happen. And we'll do some negotiating for some optics and get out of there. And that'll be the end of that. Speaking of proxy wars, we don't talk about enough. Pakistan just went to war with killed 140 extremist separatists in their western region of Balochistan, which I know I'm mispronouncing, but I don't care. I speak English. But Balochistan is one of Pakistan's more mineral-rich regions, more resource-heavy regions, and so I think it's very clear that these separatists are definitely a proxy for Iran, and Iran's trying to do the same thing we're trying to do with Canada, where if we could get, part of them to break away and give us better natural resource situation, that they're trying to do the same thing with Balochistan, so that they can get it to break away from Pakistan. It weakens their neighbor Pakistan. It gets them access to those minerals and better trade deals. So that's all like kind of the psyops, future war, resource war that's going on over there. Hey, shouts out to Iran. They're shooting their shot, but on this podcast, we love Pakistan. I know that's not popular to say. We love Pakistan. Don't fuck around, dude. Pakistan do not fuck around. They've been fucking up terrorist groups and extremists all through the last year. They just go in and smoke everyone. They don't play games. The Pakistani military apparatus is way more effective than people would believe. I've had several friends who have worked for the U.S. government and who have gone over to Pakistan, as well as many other places in the world, and have told me that in training exercises, the Pakistanis show themselves to be extremely competent fighters, an extremely well-ran army, which they can't say for a lot of the other places they go. So shouts out to Pakistan. They're kind of slept on. The Pakistanis, they don't fight like they had border skirmishes with India over the last year. They don't fuck around with that. Speaking of which, Pakistan and India, I don't know how true this is, but supposedly, according to everywhere I read, have 2 of the most powerful intelligence apparatuses on the planet. Not quite, but approaching the power of the CIA or MI6. And they only use it on each other. They have 2 of the most powerful intelligence networks on the planet, and they only use it to spy on each other. So Pakistan's only using 99% of their resources to spy on India. India's using 99% of their intelligence apparatus to spy on Pakistan. And I think that's really funny. They put all this money and effort into these crazy spy network intelligence apparatuses, and they only use them on each other. And that's very fun. It's like a spy versus spy situation they got going on over there, which, hey, keeps them contained. Let them keep fighting each other. Let them be distracted, okay? Those are 2 huge countries with nukes, and supposedly Pakistan's got a pretty powerful army. I don't know that if the same is for India. I have no sources on that. But, we don't want them looking outward, shall we say. Let's keep them at each other's throats, so we don't have to deal with that. In a bit of lighter news, Mexico banned vapes earlier this month, nicotine vapes, like Geek bars and Elf bars and Juuls and all that shit. They banned them, but they banned the sale of them. They did not ban the use of them. So you can walk around with a vape, you just can't buy or sell them, which is kind of like a weird gray area. It's one of those gray area laws. And what that's led to is Mexican cartels have swooped in to take over the black market for vapes, as they do with every black market item in Mexico, because the vape industry or market rather, in Mexico right before the ban was projected or estimated to be about $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion a year. And that is quite that's a lot of money. And so the cartel saw this and said, oh, we can do that. We'll take care of that right now. And so now you have cartels like shaking down gas stations for protection money so they can sell vapes, and having like street dealers for mango jewel pods and shit, which is like, it's not funny because the cartel does a lot of fucked up stuff, but it is kind of funny that like the same guys that run a cocaine fentanyl empire are now running a vape empire in the exact same way. And there's already been violence and killings over it. Several people have been kidnapped over it. They're doing they're even making like illegal vape factories. So like guys are out there in the Mexican jungle and desert, but instead of like cutting up cocaine or mixing, Molly, they're making fucking vapes. They're making like off-brand geek bars, like loading in the juice in there in basically slave sweatshops. And so I think that's very funny. How like, hey, crime finds a way. So, shouts out to the Mexican cartel keeping vapes alive in Mexico. I'm glad I switched to nicotine pouches like Zyn, Hopefully they'll never outlaw those. If I have to buy those from a cartel member, I will. I will get a Zyn dealer, and I'll probably get killed very quick. I'm not built for crime anymore. Back when I was a junkie and I was an addict, I had like a sixth sense for whether situations were safe or not. And I walked out of a lot of situations I shouldn't have, just because it's like, look at me, I'm harmless. You're not really going to, you're going to kill me? You're going to rob me? Come on, that's mean. That's like hitting a girl. But now that I'm sober, I think I would struggle to have that same spidey sense. I probably wouldn't last long. So hopefully, nicotine stays legal over here. Also, what's funny is the same thing. Singapore already tried the same thing and it didn't work out. So you would think the Mexican government would look at what's going on in Singapore, because like earlier this year, Singapore outlawed vapes, but they didn't just outlaw the selling and manufacturing. They outlawed the use. Like, you can get arrested for possession of a vape and like actually do jail time or pay huge fines. And immediately, like, Chinese triads who were already kind of low-key in Singapore just started like an underground vape market. Just started, like, they've already busted warehouses where like Chinese triad guys are like, filling up box mods and like cooking vats of fucking EV juice and vape juice and shit. So it's like, it didn't work there. I don't know why you thought it worked in Mexico. To be fair, the Singaporean government is like straight up authoritarian and is like fucking executing people over it and like burning supply and like kicking in doors. They're really getting after it. So, hey, Singapore at least, put a stop to it. Moving on, we're going to get into some financial news. And remember, I am not a licensed fiduciary. I have no licenses of any kind. I am not a financial advisor. I am a stand-up comedian. I do stand-up comedy all over the country. And then I do funny little skits like this podcast and skits, comedy skits on my Instagram and TikTok, which you can follow me at Chris Warren Comedy. Would love to see you there. But again, this is a comedy. This next bit is comedy. This whole show is a comedy. I'm a comedian. And with that in mind, this is comedy. Let's get into it. Europe is trying desperately to get off U.S. dependence in terms of its military, specifically with military hardware. And you see this across the EU and NATO nations. And a lot of EU countries have pitched new budgets, given new spending reforms, given new goals for their military spending to get off U.S. reliance. Now, you can't really go to China, right? Because if they go to China, everything is like a Temu version of American hardware. Like, the Chinese tried to build their own F-22 Raptor, and it was clearly like a Temu version of it. It had panel gaps. It exploded a bunch of time in testing. It didn't pass any of the tests. So you can't buy Chinese. Plus, they'll put a bunch of like spyware and all that shit in there to spy on the Europeans because they're on kind of different sides of the political divide. Same thing with Russia. You can't go to them because their hardware is kind of shit, and also there's whole kind of Ukraine conflict going on. So you can't really comfortably buy from Russia, which really only leaves domestic production, which is what Europe wants to do. You want to buy domestically, meaning buying from European countries. That puts money back into the greater EU economy. So it makes sense they'd want to go domestic and buy some EU hardware to replace their American hardware. And the first place you're going to see this is specifically with air power. They want to get off reliance on U.S. air power. Pretty much all of our allies have F-35s, Europe included. And the F-35, for those that don't know, is an American manufactured and designed multi-role fighter jet. I'm a big fan of it. I love the F-35. I think it's cool as hell. A lot of people disagree. A lot of people that are into air power think the F-35 has all sorts of problems. You've seen this in the news, different politicians talking about it. I'm an F-35 apologist. I think it's awesome. I don't care what anyone says. Build more of them, right? And all of our allies have F-35s, every American ally, because that's what we pushed out. It's like the Honda Civic of military air power. You know, it's reliable. It's kind of does everything, nothing perfect, but does everything well enough. And so every country has F-35s, and you'll see it'll be like F-35 and then 2 or 3 letters after it, and that demarcates that it's going to a specific country. We have entire versions of the F-35 that we sell to like one country at a time. That's how popular this plane is. And usually it has to do with certain allies we're not as close with, so we don't want them to have all the bells and whistles on it. We don't want them to have an F-35 that's quite as good as ours, specifically with the targeting system we try to keep close to the chest. And other countries also have different specifications they need, specialization, customization they need for the F-35 to meet their standards, and so we'll build them a version that meets that so they can buy it. And Europe has a ton of F-35s. Look at any country's air power. It's almost all F-35s. And they don't want to have that anymore. They want to switch to something domestic. And the only real option they have is this plane called the Gripen. And I love I'm going to be so biased here. The Gripen is by far not the best plane. It loses out to the F-35 in almost every capacity when fair tests are done. That being said, the Gripen is such a wonky little plane. I think it's so cool. I love it. It's my favorite military plane, so I am a little biased on this. But everyone's going to realistically end up switching over to the Gripen because it's the only kind of replacement for the F-35. And while it's not as good as the F-35, it is about a third of the cost, and it is made in Sweden. So it is domestically produced. And it's made by Saab AB. Saab AB. Some of you might know them because they made cars for a while in the 90s and 2000s. They made Saabs. And Jerry Seinfeld's a big fan. You'll see him driving them all the time. He's got like a collection of them. He drove them in like every episode of Seinfeld. If you watch old episodes of Seinfeld, the car that Jerry drives is a Saab. The reason they had to stop making Saabs is because it was made by a jet engine company, and they made it way too complex, like a piece of military hardware, and so they lost money on every single one sold, and that's why today there's only a few mechanics in any region of the country that can actually work on them, because you have to basically take the whole fucking car apart to do anything on it. So not really a practical vehicle, but the Saabs were cool. My uncle had one for a while, and it was a cool car. But Saab makes the Gripen, and the Gripen's the only reasonable alternative that's domestically produced for the F-35. And you've already seen a bunch of countries start to switch their fleets over to the Gripen. You saw recently Canada talked about doing that. And I told you all to, as a bit, to get Saab AB stock almost a year ago, and it's gone way up since then. So I was right yet again, just saying. But there's still time to get in on this because I think that trend is going to spread, and more countries are going to replace their F-35s with Saab Gripens. And so the stock has a lot of potential to go up. So I think Saab's going to kind of be the winner in the air dominance replacement war there. The other one I want to talk about is BAE Systems, and I know it's BAE Systems. You think I do all this research and I don't know it's called BAE Systems? I get a lot of comments and DMs get mad when I call it BAE Systems, but I'm a comedian. I think it's funny to call a stock BAE. A military industrial complex stock getting called BAE is very funny. Let me have it. So we will refer to them as BAE Systems from now on. Now, BAE Systems makes a lot of missiles, for lack of a better word. They make other stuff, but missiles is really their bread and butter. And so I think they're going to be a great competitor in that space for Europeans to buy missiles. They are a European company, and so I think you're already seeing the trend towards that. I think that will continue. Thales as well, another European manufacturer of missiles. I believe Thales is French specifically. And I told you all to buy Thales like 8 months ago, and Thales has gone up over 200% since I made that call. So again, I'm right. I'm always right. Listen to me. Again, this is a bit. Don't actually listen to me. This is all bit. But in theory, the comedic bit has been weirdly accurate to predicting stock prices in the future. That's just how life imitates art. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Thales is up 100%, so it's doubled in value since I made that call 8 months ago. And I think they will continue to rise because, again, they're a huge missile manufacturer, and they don't just sell to Europe. They sold a bunch of stuff to India when the India-Pakistan stuff kicked off, and other places as well. So I think they'll be a big competitor to kind of swap out things like interceptors and JDAMs and Tomahawks and stuff like that in Europe. I think they'll look for the Thales equivalent of that, and Thales will probably go through the roof. But again, this is all a bit. This is a comedy bit, and we're going to move on to some other news now that this comedic bit that is not financial advice comedy is over. In other financial news, silver crashed earlier this week on Thursday, or last week rather, and I could have seen this coming because I'm not into the precious metals market that much. I have a little bit of gold, but nothing crazy. But silver was undervalued for a long time because historically silver and gold have risen with each other, right? In the last 20, 30 years, gold has gone through the roof and silver has kind of stayed a little stagnant. It's grown, but not as much as it should have for the parallel with gold, right? So everyone saw that silver was undervalued. And so they all pumped money into silver, whether it was buying physical silver, buying shares in silver futures, things like that. And they pumped it back up to a ridiculous, like silver shot through the roof over the last year, to a crazy, unrealistic number. And now the market is adjusting. So now silver is going back down to its real price. It lost about 30-something% in one day last week. So silver kind of crashed because it was super overvalued. It was undervalued, and then people invested in it so much that it went completely other. It did a huge swing from undervalued to super overvalued, and now the market is competing to kind of get it to its real value, what silver actually should be worth. So I wouldn't panic too much on that. I think that's just the market correcting itself. Gold dropped 5% as well in a day, which is a little bit more concerning because gold tends to be more stable. But again, gold was super overvalued as well. Gold got to crazy prices per ounce, and so I think this is the market just kind of correcting itself. I think silver and gold will go up and down over the next 6 months to a year until they kind of stabilize at their actual value. And then they'll just do the thing they've always done, which is go up a couple percent a year and beat inflation. And yeah, so I think everyone's over panicking about that. I think it's just a market correction that happens. Another thing that's happened is Bitcoin dropped in price. Bitcoin dropped in price, but then the real thing was $1.7 billion worth of Bitcoin got liquidated. In other words, people sold that much Bitcoin to pull their money out of that market into cash. And crypto has always been up and down. Bitcoin's supposed to be the stable one. I don't work in the crypto market that much. Quite honestly, because I'm bitter. Because back in the day in like 2014 through 2016, I had a decent amount of Bitcoin. And I never held all of it at once because what you used to do, the point of Bitcoin, which is very upsetting to see what it's turned into, the point of Bitcoin was so you could buy illegal shit online. So I used to be an alcoholic and a drug addict, and so I would buy small amounts of Bitcoin back when it was worth almost nothing, to then go onto websites like the Silk Road through a Tor browser, and I would buy illicit substances. I would buy drugs because I was a junkie, all right? Not proud of it. It just is what it is. And that system used to work great. I never got burned once on one of those deals. Probably spent thousands of dollars through that, just buying different stuff I couldn't get in my local scene. And it was a great thing. And then one day, me and my friends turned on the news in like 2016, somewhere around there, and we saw CNN talking about Bitcoin and the Silk Road and the dark web. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, now it's gone mainstream. Everyone knows about this. The fun's over. Like, it's over. It was fun. This whole thing was to buy illegal stuff online. And now that it is discovered, it's going to lose all its value. So we all sold off we made our last purchases and we sold off all the rest of our Bitcoin and got out because we figured now it's going to crash or, the FBI is going to come in and seize all the Bitcoin wallets. And that's the end of the fun. It was a great era. And then that didn't happen. Silk Road got shut down. And shouts out to Silk Road. When they got shut down, they did not release anyone's information. They refused to, much to their dismay. They got in a lot of trouble for that. But shouts out Silk Road. They didn't release anyone's information. That's some real OG shit. You don't see people snitch nowadays, not then. But now Bitcoin's become like this alternative currency because when it did go mainstream, we thought it was going to collapse. What it ended up doing is getting normal people to see it as an actual holder of value and start investing in it. And that's why you have all these crypto bros now. And that's why you have all these copycat crypto coins. Everyone's got a crypto coin, and then they do rug pulls, or some of them stay around, like Ethereum kind of stayed around. Dogecoin, weirdly enough, kind of stayed around. But yeah, that's not what we thought crypto was for. We thought it was for buying drugs online, and now it's like a kind of normalized mainstream currency where you have like Bitcoin ATMs in New York City. And so I'm a little bitter because I did the math once. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but like if I had held all the Bitcoin I had purchased and never spent it on the things I spent it on, and I just held it till now, I would have hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'd have so much money. And it's sad to know that I just spent it on like pounds of weed and sheets of acid and like fucking Xanax. And that's, it is what it is. It is what it is. That happened. That was all a joke, by the way. I never did any of that stuff. I'm an upstanding citizen. So I don't follow crypto that much, but Bitcoin dropped a little bit. And, who knows what's going to happen with that. I don't have enough insight into that market. I just thought I'd share that with everyone because it was big news. I personally kind of still think crypto has been co-opted or maybe was always being used by the FBI or CIA or another government agent or maybe a foreign government agent to track illegal things going on online. Kind of like, I think it was similar to not Iran-Contra, I think it was Fast and Furious where under the Obama administration, we sold, or the CIA rather, maybe it was FBI, sold a bunch of illegal like AK-47s and other guns to the cartel with the idea that they were going to track all those guns and they would help them somehow like dismantle these crime organizations by having more insight into them. There was more to it. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But then they immediately lost track of all the guns and the plan didn't work, and they ended up just putting out a bunch of illegal guns on the streets of Mexico by mistake with no benefit. And part of me thinks that's kind of what happened with Bitcoin. I do kind of think it was a government psyop originally that got out of hand, and it didn't accomplish what they wanted to with it, and now it's just out there in the ether and out of their control. I could be wrong on that, but that's kind of partly what I think is the nature of Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies. So that's my take on that. Well, guys, it has been a lot of fun on this third episode of the War Party podcast with me, your host, Chris Warren. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Chris Warren Comedy. I put all my show dates up on there. I put a lot of short form content of similar things we talk about in the podcast and some other stories that didn't make the podcast. So that's a fun one. Feel free to DM me. Please leave comments, like, subscribe. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to change about this podcast or anything we're doing right we should do more of on this podcast. Again, I want this to be a good podcast that you enjoy interacting with and look forward to. So if there's anything, suggestions you have, I'd like to hear them because, this is only episode 3. We're still figuring it out. I want this to be a good product. But guys, this has been so much fun. Thank you for joining us on the War Party, and hope to see you next week.